6:02, we'll call the ZAC Committee meeting in order for the August 29th, 2024. We do approval of the agenda. I'll call to order. Tom Divney,
Mark Manning.
Nick Bonapane.
And Jessica Call, Town Planner. Norma Dietrich, Building Inspector.
I make a motion, we approve the August 29th, 2024 ZAC Committee agenda.
I'll second that.
hey, I'll do new business. Review planning services agreement with Tara Bamford, consultant for services provided to assist in amending section 320, non-conforming use, structures and lots as it is defined.
Yep, so at our first ZAC meeting, we had talked about seeing if we could obtain Tara's services just for that one particular ordinance, just because it needs it. So I talked to her, she's willing to offer her services, so she's provided us with a contract. You guys could take a peek at it. She's willing to do many things for a decent price. She has written these types of ordinances in the past, so she will at some point send us some samples. So it's a little easier for her. She's not writing it from scratch. So it may be a little easier for her to write up an ordinance for the town of Alton. You know, maybe use some of what she already has and then see what Alton's needs are.
Yeah.
So that would be really helpful. So that's that. So it's just really for you guys to just take a peek at. It's really the planning board that would end up.
Oh, so we don't have to vote on it.
Yeah, you wouldn't vote on it. I just wanted you guys to be aware that this took place and services she has to offer. So she's going to take us from, you know, reviewing the ordinance to helping us write a warrant article and all the stuff in between.
Sounds good.
Yes. And she'll attend again via Zoom like she did before. So and that's about it with that.
Looks pretty good to me.
Yeah,
Pretty
pretty
standard.
straightforward. Yeah, yep.
Moving on to old business, we have review and discuss first draft of the 2024-2025 proposed zoning amendments.
All right, so what you guys have before you tonight is a really rough draft. Things I was able to came back on Monday. There are still some things that need to be addressed. Just try to get as much before you tonight as I could. So proposed amendment number 1 has 2 parts. The first part, which is Roman numeral number 1, has new proposed definitions. And then section 2 has some amendments to existing definitions. So do you want me to just go ahead and move forward with it? Do you want to read from it? Do you want me to read from these?
I hadn't had the time
However you-
to look at them.
Yep.
So wanna go through-
Yeah, no,
Go on.
these were just done this afternoon,
Oh,
so
okay. All right.
we,
I got the email.
no
It's
one,
like-
no one really has a chance to
Okay.
look at anything. Yeah. So talking with Norma, there's a bunch of definitions that are not in the existing zoning ordinance and felt like these were important. So for boathouse, I went online, so a lot of these definitions either came directly from an RSA, either from a DES, other places online, you know, even from the dictionary. So I tried to pull and create some definitions for the boathouse. I put a couple of them because I wasn't quite sure what you guys might like to see as a definition. So the first one is an accessory docking structure for the storage of watercraft and associated materials having a permanent roof covering. Oops. Having a permanent roof covering,
A roof covering one or more boat slips.
okay, yeah. One or more boat slips that may have permanent or removable sidewalls. Or you could have a single-story detached accessory structure designed and used to house, shelter, store, or protect watercraft while moored in the water and or related marine equipment, but shall not be used as a dwelling unit.
I like the dwelling unit part of that one. but
Yes.
The definition on the first one.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yep.
Is it possible to explain what the zoning rules are around a boathouse? Or is that so vague and so buried in different places that, because I'd love to, I mean, if I knew that the rule around the boathouse was that it had to be, you know, so small or so big or whatever, that would help me decide whether or not the definition made
Or
sense.
you mean overall dimensions of the maximum what that they can be? I see what you're saying.
No, what the rules are around a boathouse. You can build a boathouse without any permit?
Well, I
No.
think we need to look at the rules of that separately, but we definitely need to start with a definition because we didn't have that at all.
But don't we have rules already existing that include the word boathouse in them? Well, that's why we're doing this. We do.
Correct, right. We have regulations in place. So these definitions, there are regs in place, but they don't define the word.
So here's my question again. I'll ask it
Yeah.
differently, I guess. Is it easy enough to describe the regs in your mind on when we've seen these in the past, what the regs have been and what the issues have been? Kind of,
I
or
think I know what you're
are
asking.
they so buried that we cannot gonna be able to get to that?
Like if you were to take boathouse out of one of the regs, right, where would that word boathouse be used?
Yeah, what typically comes up around boathouse? I know there was the stuff about not having a kitchen. We ran into one of those last year. Right, there's stuff about not being able to sleep there, well, you could sleep there, but you couldn't have a kitchen, can't be permanent there. Although we allowed one guy to have an unlimited period of time that he could have people sleeping there, I remember that. But
Well,
I
that's
mean,
why it's good to say that it's not a dwelling unit because,
exactly.
I mean, that clearly
That-
defines it.
That is just
without-
my point.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
what other types of things have come up around boathouse? And I know I'm gonna making this more difficult than it needs to be, but I think we need to take that into the context when we're defining what a boathouse is.
Didn't we have something that say that you could only more or less put a bunkhouse?
There is a
Over a boat.
bunkhouse and there's also a boathouse.
But I thought there was been a couple cases where people have put houses
So-
in the boathouse.
Yeah, so Nick likes the combination of the two. Nick, what is it about the combination of the two that you think we're protecting?
And no, it was just in the very beginning, in that first description. I just liked how it's worded as an accessory docking structure. You know, basically for obviously docking boats. I felt like mooring reminded me more of like mooring out in the water, not one that's attached to land type thing or attached to a dock, I should say. And then the dwelling unit part, obviously, because what you guys had talked about before at the last meeting about them not being able to be used as a dwelling unit. So I just thought we would take the first, a lot of the first sentence and then add dwelling unit to the end of it somewhere. That was my opinion.
Gotcha. And under our rules, right? You can't really put up a boathouse like this anyhow without the state approving, right?
Right, you have to get it, yeah,
Shoreline.
right, the shoreline permit.
Shoreline permit.
And you can't turn it into a dwelling unit. As it
Yep.
specifically says.
And I kind of recall, in one of the two of the cases that it has to be over the water. But if you're putting up a new boathouse, it has to go into the land. There's a cut into the land, or maybe that was just on the islands.
Don't think that's the case.
It's not the
Actually, I
case.
think cutting into the land is that's
That-
much more involved.
But
Very
that
much
was
more
actually what
DES.
came up on one of the island ones.
Hmm,
They
okay.
put a new boathouse in and it had to cut into the land because it couldn't go over the water. And I think that was on Rattlesnake.
Could be where it's located on a rattlesnake because of the wind.
Hmm.
You mean
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It wasn't like attached to it was
They
actually
wouldn't,
attached.
they
to
weren't
the
gonna
land.
allow them to, the plan required the boathouse to be built, cut into the land,
I see what you're saying.
and it couldn't be out over the water. And I don't know why, other than the state required that.
Yeah, for whatever reason. Yeah.
Well, I know,
bad on it.
What, so,
I guess it's the
so I
Maybe
get,
because it was the
the one
island.
side,
you
I
know?
mean, Rattlesnake Island gets a lot of wind
Mm.
and ice.
so getting back to this, so what are we trying to, it's,
Right.
without knowing how it's kind of used,
So I
Right, we're
think.
just trying to
so
define
it's
it.
Listed,
right?
And the definition is good because it doesn't have any limitations on the size or shape. Really, it's just defining what a boathouse is used for.
Okay,
So I like this description. And I also think it should say it should not be used for a dwelling.
but we know that if it's a boathouse and someone were to come that didn't have a boathouse today requesting a boathouse, they'd still have to go through the water, through the state.
Yeah, the shoreline.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm good with the combination, Nick, like you said, sorry to get in there with. a
No,
label.
no, that's fine. That's what this is about. Absolutely. Yeah, so using a dwelling unit somewhere in the end of that, or a separate sentence or something at the end of that first one. I like that description. It was good.
yeah, it's located in section 327 and 328, but it didn't describe what it is. So there's two sections in here in the regs, in the zoning ordinance.
There's only the two sections, so what do the two sections do?
So 327 is the setback requirements. So that tells you, about setbacks, and then 328 is the height restrictions.
On the
So
building?
it tells you,
Okay.
right, where you can have it, how far away you can have it and how tall.
So we don't need to say that, we don't have to say it at a certain size because it's already covered.
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Does that satisfy like your inquiry?
I think kind of, I'm just trying to figure out down the road how it's gonna be used, because if boathouse could also be a boathouse that sits next to your house on dry land where you park your boat in the house, inside that house in the winter and never anywhere near the water, I don't know, that's what I'm
Right.
trying to figure.
Oh, you're trying to, so we should add something about it being in,
No,
no?
no, that was sort of a bad example. I think this one was specific to a boathouse that's on the water,
Okay.
but like a cupola, does it have to be a dome-like ornamental structure?
That came,
Could it
well,
be
like I
a
said,
square,
that came
could it be
from,
a square-like, that,
right,
that's what I'm trying to get to, and I'm trying
Exactly.
to figure
Why don't
out
we
where
just-
to get choose.
Go with small ornamental structure and take dome-like out.
yep, we could
So
do
we'll
that.
That one next, but
Yeah,
I'm with you, so I'm good with where you guys would go.
all right, so we're gonna keep the first one and add, but shall not be used as a dwelling unit.
Mhm.
All right, so,
Would you limit this to single story?
Well, we have a lot of two-story ones out there, don't we? I think we got quite a few two-story
We
ones
have a
anyway.
lot that have upstairs to them,
Yeah,
but the height requirement on it now is like 15 feet or something, right?
Yep.
The height
From the
requirement, I
water.
think, is something ridiculously
Um,
short,
the boathouse can only be 20 feet.
20 feet.
Yeah, 20 feet.
Oh, so it still could be two stories.
can you finagle two stories on it? You could, I guess, if you set it low. Yeah, I guess you
I
could.
think so.
You could.
Hmm.
Do we?
Mr. Shea, why would we want it to be one story?
No, I would just make sure my green light is on here. The the only, there is always the temptation at the water side to get into a dwelling. And, if you're not depriving anybody of anything by limiting it to one story, it would eliminate the temptation of, hey, we got that second level, why don't we just put in a few things? The building inspector will never know, and we'll all live happily ever after. But I didn't think about the storage issue, that having a boat, I know about all the junk that goes along with it. And it'd be
Yeah.
handy to have a second level to put it all up there.
I know in my neighborhood, there's a lot of them with two stories, but there's also a lot of them with decks on the top.
Yeah.
Right, it's almost all of them, I think, have decks on the top.
I think it would be important to say that it is near the water or partially in the water. Because that's really what a boathouse is. It's for the storage of the boats in the water. Oftentimes they will have mechanical equipment that will pull the boats out of the water in the winter. But the second definition at least says something about the water. The first
Yes.
part of the definition doesn't really say that.
So the first one, right, because it only refers to a structure covering one or more boat slips.
Well, I don't know if you have a definition for boat slips, but
Right.
you gotta have water for that.
That's what it means.
But the only thing, that same note, what I was thinking about where it had in the water, like you said, what if you have a lift?
Yep.
And then is it technically not in the water and you can't do it? Because I mean, I'm just trying to think of things that people are gonna argue.
Oh, absolutely. This is
So
why
now,
we have
now,
several
now you're
different
saying
people.
I can't put a boat lift in my boathouse.
You can put a boat lift in it, but it still has to be, I mean, you have to be able to drive the boat in. and
Right,
have
well,
it
that's how
Stay
much
in the
the water-
water, even if doesn't stay in the water all year.
Could after you, after the removable sidewalls, could you put, in, I don't know if in close proximity wouldn't be the right word, but could you say something about the proximity of the water and not to be used as a dwelling unit? Can we incorporate them together so it's not like a crazy long definition? Is there a way to do that? You know what I mean? Not to be, guess what I'm trying to say is what's the best way to describe it as having to be in the water?
So then maybe
considered a
right next to boat
boathouse.
slips. Do something with, one or more boat slips
In the
in the
water?
water. Or somewhere,
Looked at any other towns and,
not yet.
I mean, I just thought of this. I mean, I could.
Yeah. Yeah.
Permanent full sidewalls.
I think if you specify boat slips, it's pretty clear that it's gotta be in the water.
I agree with that. I also thought that a boathouse could have a dwelling unit on the second floor as long as it didn't have a kitchen or a toilet. So I guess I don't know what that.
Yeah, I seen record.
dwelling
so I mean,
unit needs
I
help.
thought somewhere along, I don't know if it was in here or not, or this part of the discussion that you could put a bunkhouse.
That's what I
essentially
meant,
on-
yeah, bunkhouse.
And that's for sleeping only.
Right.
So that is allowed, we think.
If it's a bunkhouse.
Is a bunkhouse considered a dwelling unit?
Nope.
Nope.
A
it's-
dwelling
not.
has to be, the dwelling unit is defined, it's very specific what a dwelling unit can be.
Okay,
Okay, so if I'm coming in at this in a different angle, if I'm gonna read this, this does not tell me that boat slips in the water. That boat slip is a boat slip, called a boat slip because it's in the water.
I think so.
So that would be the definition of a boat slip, right? You'd have to know what that meant,
I don't think you would have a boat slip out of the water.
right? That would
Unless-
just be like,
Unless it would be like, would a dry dock boat slip?
Yeah, but even that has water in
Probably
it,
is
and
such
then
a
you pump
thing
the
as
water
that.
out.
That's
clearly
true.
I don't have a
That's true
boat,
too.
so, yeah, so if boat slip means that it's a docking type, a dock in the water,
Yeah. I think
Then
Mr.
you'd
Shane
know it
nailed
was in
that
the
one.
water.
That's clear enough.
yep. All right, we can leave that the way it is and maybe the next meeting. Okay,
Rehash it.
we can,
Well, I think we're gonna combine it like Nick suggested, right?
Yeah, with the end of being the dwelling unit part on the end, yeah.
yeah, so that and that, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so cupola. So if we remove the dome-like, then it just is a small ornamental structure adorning a roof or dome used to serve as a roof lantern to admit light and air or as an observation post.
Can we just say decorative?
What was
I
that?
think most are decorative now.
So we had an
We
issue.
want to limit the size of a cupola, no
Yeah.
larger than.
What a bad idea.
We had an issue where a guy had a house that was probably 30 by 30 and he put a 20 by 20 or so, right, a rough cupola on top and wanted to call it a cupola and not a third floor. And it was 20 by 20. And he claimed that his wife, all she was gonna do was use it as an observation post to have coffee in the morning. And never to be used for anything else. And it clearly was gonna be a room.
Oh, obvious, yeah.
Yeah.
20 by 20?
It's 20 by 20.
Yeah.
I mean, it was close to that.
It's a
whatever
pretty
it
big
was.
couch.
Just put it, yeah, it's a couch and a couple of bunk beds. So, I think we need to be a little more specific maybe on this one, right?
Yeah, so like a small ornamental structure, not to exceed, what would you think a standard size cupola would be? Well, what's the one over here look like? Norma, do you know how big that one is? What the overall on the town one that we're redoing right now?
Yeah.
Oh, where is that at?
The one at the, right, oh, I can't even tip my tongue, next to Alton Village Store?
Oh,
That,
that one,
yeah, the one that they're redoing with the roofing and stuff.
yeah.
Like, what's the biggest one you think that we could have? What's the biggest size?
I think like a 3 by 3 would be.
Oh, it's gotta be bigger than 3 by
Bigger
3.
I mean, I've seen those that are truly a little walk-up area that have like a little seat in the corner or a place you can sit and observe, but still, those are never really any bigger than like 8 by 8.
So if we were to make a general 8 by 8 guideline, right, they could always, if say they wanted to use it as an observation post or something like that, and they wanted a 10 by 10 or something, they would have to come for an adjustment to be able to do that, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I
So
think
we
we
could-
should limit the size.
So limit the size to what's everybody thought on 8 by 8?
Sounds
You can
right.
still fit, you could still fit a person up there, 2 people,
Or smaller if you want.
yeah, 8 by 8 or smaller.
Do you want to, do you want to list it as, square footage?
What is
That's 64, but
64?
Yep.
We could do 50.
Yep,
That would be
50's good.
A little
No
small.
larger than 50 square feet.
Yep,
All right, a small ornamental structure.
not to exceed. Exceed 50 square feet.
All right, so a small ornamental structure not to exceed 50 square feet, adorning a roof or dome used to serve as a roof lantern to admit light and air or as an observation post. All right,
Does the cupola height have to be within the overall 35-foot height?
yes.
Good, okay. Thank you.
Is that specified somewhere?
Yeah.
It is.
It is. We went through this with one of the cases
Yep.
we had.
height restrictions.
And they actually tried to go higher and they were nice enough to bring it down to 35, but it still was a third floor.
That was.
Yeah, they have to come for a special exception if it's above the 35 feet.
Is that what it says in there?
Yep. This cupola
Because I
right
know they're
here.
listed in there.
Yeah.
so I thought it, I didn't need to. Did it say not including? This is not including. It's not constituted.
The height limitation on the building. There wasn't.
Yeah, it's listed what they would be.
Building.
Those are the examples. Okay.
It's 35 feet. I don't know. Good.
So this next one, density, I was struggling with this one. I struggled with that one and footprint. I know what they are, they was just tough to describe.
Now, this is another one again, and you know, how careful do we need to be with this? Because this seems like an important one that's probably used in a lot of different ways. Right, because they're out, even the one with the one we made up where they could stick the 12 units in the corner of a lot. I forget what that was called, like
The flexible zoning subdivision.
flexible zoning,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Right, I mean, if we say they can stick 12 unit, or more importantly, on the mobile home place that we just approved, right? I mean, they're gonna put 40 mobile homes on 10,000 square
Right.
foot
Lots, yeah.
lots, yeah.
Yeah, that's where this started. The engineer was asking what density meant because in the mobile home park layout and the description in there, it talked about the density that was allowed in the zoning district. But that was the only place it was mentioned, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so it matters.
Yep.
What's a developed unit as opposed to an undeveloped unit? Do we know?
It would have to be specific to something, I think.
The number of developed units in a specific area of land, specific to density.
That sounds like it would have to be specific to
Should it
maybe
say
the area of
habitable?
land.
Well, I mean, that doesn't help us either if they got stuff that's being built. I don't know.
Live, I'm trying to think like you meant livable, the number of
Habitable, probably, right?
habitable. Now habitable would be, that'd be kitchen, that'd be everything. You think habitable, you gotta live in it.
Anything that somebody can live in,
Yeah.
right? And that's what we're trying to limit. I thought it
Yeah.
was the number of units that people can live in.
Mhm.
I don't think it's specific to habitable residences. I think it's just in general, like what does density mean?
Oh, okay.
Right,
So they could be.
right. So we're not coming up
commercial
with like, okay, you have to be like, this
Okay.
many acres, you can only build on this much of, you know, that piece of property. It's just like, what is density?
Gotcha.
Should this say allowable units? Developed implies that they're already there.
Yeah.
I can just scratch this definition altogether and just bring you guys something else.
You have something better, you think?
Yes,
Okay. What do you got?
I don't have anything better at the moment. I got this far today.
I think it might be more of like a mathematical equation
Yeah,
that we may be able to find a good definition for.
okay, I'll look somewhere
Which
else.
may be similar to what you have here, but
Right.
more, maybe more specific.
Actually, in that definition there, it does go on. So I actually found it.
Yeah.
It
As
has
you can
per
see, I
acre,
was.
floor area, gross floor space.
Yeah, so I was kind of struggling with
Habitable
the,
rooms.
without it becoming,
Yeah.
you know, a paragraph.
But kind
um,
of goes what Norm was saying. It can't get more, it gets more complicated.
Yes, it does. So I will come back with something better than a one sentence definition.
Is this group also at some point supposed to come up with zoning bylaws that we think are missing? Or is that not the task of this team? I know we're doing the definitions now, but at some point are we supposed to say, hey, we think there's a problem with the zoning regulation we have around mobile home units?
Yeah,
Or
that's what
supposed
we
to
do.
that
Yep.
stuff.
That's,
So-
yeah, that's what this committee would.
Should we
Is
make our
tasked
own
with.
list or do we want to create our?
Well, we went over the list the last time we met of things that we wanted to add. I mean, we can still add some more things if you need to.
Definitions or
Yes,
bylaws?
or whatever,
Oh, okay. So
if
you are
we-
keeping a list.
you know, so if you need to do more, if you have something that you're not seeing that's on here and you're like, I think that's really important, then let's
I think
discuss
we
it. We
should
can add
at
it
some
on there.
point discuss the density.
I think the mobile manufactured home park is part of our
It is
edited
one of our
version.
things. Okay,
Um,
thank you.
Because we had some other wording in
Yeah,
that section that
yeah.
wasn't clear.
I think that's in here.
It's in here.
One we'll get to.
It's number 5, so we'll get
All
to
right.
it.
Thank you.
All right, I'll come back with density. So there's, the definition for fence, you either have a legal fence or you have a spite fence. So we just went ahead with the, fence comma legal. That came from the state. So it's a physical divider of such height as to be reasonably adequate for their purpose and in good repair, consisting of rails, timber, boards, or stone wall, barbed, electrified, or woven wire, and all brooks, rivers, ponds, creeks, ditches, hedges, and other things deemed by the fence viewers to be equivalent thereto shall be accounted legal and sufficient fences. This next section came from, different areas. And I don't know if this is a question, wasn't sure if this applies to the town of Alton, but this came from the state, so I'm assuming it is not to exceed 6 feet in the rear or side and 4 feet in the front.
It depends. Some towns want you to get a building permit. If it's over 6 feet, it's considered a structure. If it's larger than that, or they want to monitor those.
Okay, because I think historically we've been kind of telling people if it's taller than 6 feet, you need a building permit.
Yeah,
So I'm not too sure if we want to keep this, 4 feet, that sentence. So I'm not, I don't know what you think.
Do we have that anywhere else in the zoning or?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
You got this part from the state?
we could leave a definition.
So I
here.
think prior to that sentence was from the state and then
Is
this
that
other section was coming
building
from
code?
Mike. That must have come from the
Not
state.
really.
I would think we stay
Yeah.
in line with the state as much as we possibly.
you
can.
know, I mean, the town could do 6 in the front yard. It could,
Well, I mean, if this came from the state, not, I would keep
yeah,
it as.
actually, no, we couldn't do more. You can be more restrictive. You can't be less restrictive.
Well, I mean, it's saying if you want to go higher, you have to get a building permit.
Yeah.
We're just telling you what you can do without a building permit, so.
The only thing I would add to this, and I ran into this in Massachusetts. I'm trying to recall a specific instance, but as you get toward the front of the property, if you're blocking your neighbor's ability to get out of his driveway, that was an issue with the fences. And I forget how they handled it,
That may be why they
Site.
have the 4 feet in the front yard.
but that's the front. This is
Yeah.
the 6 foot's over here and the driveway's like right here. You can't,
Mm.
guy can't see trucks coming up the street or whatever.
Right.
It was a,
We
So
could-
how do you
could
like
stop
not
it
to impede
within-
line of
Yeah,
driveway
but-
line of sight,
Site.
driveway line of sight, line of sight, something. Cause you can't call it driveway. What would you say? Not to exceed, I mean, not to impede driveway, something. There's gotta be a.
There's a front
Right,
yard
yeah,
setback.
Joining properties, line of sight.
Yeah, adjoining properties, line of
site
sight
traffic or something.
to line of sight to roadway,
To
line
roadway.
of sight to, yeah, to traffic.
Or a specific number of feet might be easier.
Well, I was thinking of the feet thing, but the only problem with that is, I mean, if the fence is 6 feet off the property line, you can pull up, you know, if it's 12 feet off the property line, you have a lot more sight distance. It's hard to say how many feet back, you know what I mean?
Depending on how far down it is.
Yeah, depending on how
right.
far off the property line it is.
Hmm.
But then you leave it open to who says what line of sight is and what isn't. You have, you have a
Or
car,
let's
I
say,
have a truck,
want to do it what Norma's saying, we
vice
do have
versa.
a setback.
I think in
requirement.
Mass, they did what Homer was suggesting, which is there was
20
a
feet.
amount of footage.
From
that
the
came
front
back from the
back.
front corner of the property, not from where the fence started. But from the, like.
It doesn't matter. It could be 4 feet in, could be 20 feet in. It's the same amount back,
It's the
right?
same amount back that has to be 4 feet or
Yep.
less, and then you can do the 6 foot. I don't remember what the height, what the amount of feet was, but it was that.
Yeah. I know there's towns that will have a definition of a front yard and then they will put some restrictions on that, like no junk cars in the yard in the front, between the front of your house and the street line. So
Right.
define this front yard and there were some fence regulations that would rely on that space being defined, which was kind of nice, actually.
My other crazy thing is, it has materials. Will we want to add synthetic material?
Yeah, a lot of
Somebody's gonna say,
fences
"I
now
wanna put
are
a-
poly.
But that's,
Mhm.
Yeah.
a composite.
Yep.
So I figured if call it synthetic and kind of cover that.
Right. And that's, so when I was writing this, I was kind of surprised because
It's probably an
it
old
came,
definition
yeah. So
for.
I was like, well, thinking the same thing. I'm like, well, what if they want to make a fence out of something else?
Because I could see that being an issue.
Right?
You could say, adequate for their purpose and in good repair, consisting of natural or synthetic materials. Natural, synthetic, or live materials
Designed for a fence.
designed for a fence. That way you wouldn't have to list them and then you could,
Or-
it says, and other things.
You don't want someone putting,
So you
those
can't make a
storage
fence out of
containers in the front and saying that's a
Oh.
fence.
Exactly.
people use pallets for.
Right. Pallet fences. yeah.
Used as, yeah,
Okay.
okay, that makes sense.
Consisting of
Synthetic,
natural,
yep,
synthetic-
natural, synthetic,
natural, synthetic, or
live,
live materials.
yep. And what did the end part was?
Okay, so I'm I'm
You
crossing
could
out.
say either typically
rails,
used in fence
yes.
construction or something similar to that.
Typically used in fence construction.
What's the definition of a fence viewer?
You are the adjacent person the adjacent property owner. I think that's what that is.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like you weren't the one that put the fence up, so you're the one that has to view the fence. Is what I got from when I was reading
They're
this.
supposed to get the good side.
Yeah,
And they tell me if it's not done that way.
I'm sure they do.
If you want me to fix it.
So if the fence viewer doesn't like what he or she is looking at, they can just say, I don't deem that material to be equivalent.
Perhaps.
You never heard it go that far. I think
I'm
when you do it the other way,
thinking
then
we
they
might
consider it
need
a spite fence. When you give them
Yeah.
the,
That has a definition by the state.
mm,
But I'm wondering if we should take that fence viewers piece out. Would it be easier without it in there?
probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
So, so scrap that end part and then just pick right back up at the not to exceed. Well, we're gonna add to that last sentence, I think, right? That sentence there about the, how many feet back?
Yeah, so
Right.
not to exceed 6 feet in the rear or side boundary lines, nor 4 foot in the front boundary line, including the initial first, whatever, 10 feet, 20 feet, whatever of the sidelines without a building permit.
Yeah. Nor 4 feet in front boundary line and side
In the,
boundary line.
and what was it, in 10 feet?
the initial 10 feet from the front of the boundary
And-
line on the sidelines.
That'll work.
Initial
feet will
10
work, right?
feet. Feet. From the side setback?
From the front boundary, how would you word that, Ann? Boundary nor 4 feet in the front boundary line and side boundary line.
We usually, well, it can be in the setbacks, so it has to be along the property line, right? Is that what you're saying, Nick?
The fence can be
Yeah.
in the setback, right?
Yeah.
Right, but it has to, but it can only be 4 feet
High for the first
for
10
10
feet.
feet of the side that borders a neighbor,
Yeah,
right? Because you want to have the ability to, the driveway to be able to see.
Okay.
But the point is you can't block somebody's view on a driveway.
Now,
Like you
10
said
6
earlier.
feet in the rear. 6 feet.
When we say that whatever is being installed, it'll be accounted as legal and sufficient. Does that,
oh, we're not using that part.
Yeah, that just differentiated between a legal fence and a spite fence. That's all.
oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
The wording is strange. Shall not be construed with a spite fence.
That is weird.
Okay. 6 feet.
I'm not sure why we have that last sentence at all anyhow. If we have an issue around spite fences, maybe that's a different story.
Right. We do have those.
Maybe it's somewhere else, yeah.
we have spite fences in town. But if we don't have a definition for it and it, or anything specific about it, then it's harder to enforce.
Well, I would guess it would be, if it falls into legal, it can't be a spite fence, right?
Right.
If it falls within those guidelines that we set.
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
What is a spite fence? Is that something somebody puts up?
Pissed
Just
off
give their
neighbor.
neighbor a hard time?
Yeah.
Yeah, like a 12-foot fence, like
Or
something
tarp.
that's like ridiculous.
Yeah,
Nice.
we have a neighbor that's put up just
Yeah.
tarps, zip tied together
Yeah,
really high,
that's-
like right on the property line, so.
Yeah.
But usually they're
I'm
really
looking at
high.
the, town I used to work for. They have, we talk about the sight line, they're saying that you can't have a solid fence going towards the front. So you can still have a fence, but at a certain point, you have to stop the solid fence for sight line.
Mm.
So if you had a dog or
Mm.
something, and you wanted to have it, just throwing that out there. It might be getting more complicated. This town was very complicated.
All right, let me read what I have so far. All right, so a physical divider of such height as to be reasonably adequate for their purpose and in good repair, consisting of natural, synthetic, or live materials typically used in fence construction. Not to exceed 6 feet in the rear or side boundary lines, nor 4 feet in the front boundary line, with the exception that the first 4 feet on the side property lines shall only be 4 feet high.
I think it's 10 feet,
10
we're
feet.
saying.
The
first
first
10
4
feet.
foot thing is 10.
Okay,
Does that say how far they were?
I'd have to go back.
exception on the
10 feet's
first
probably
10
enough.
feet?
Yep.
Okay, sorry, yep. Did that sound okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
On the side property lines shall only be, yeah. Be 4 feet high, okay. All right. And then the next meeting, I'll have this all rewritten and then we can
Mm.
kind of look at it again and make sure it makes sense. All right, so footprint. Are we done? We were done with that one? Okay, footprint, the contiguous outside dimensions of a structure. Does that sound? Is
My
it
only,
like too simple?
well, the only issue I have with that is that it says the contiguous outside dimensions of a structure. But what is included in that structure? Like, do you include lean-tos? Do you include like what is? Then you start getting into the definition of a structure. Like, what is a structure considered?
Right, I mean, in my mind, a footprint wouldn't include a deck or a lean-to, it would be the house.
Livable square foot, well, then you'd have, a garage is still technically part of a footprint, so it couldn't be
Right.
livable.
We have structure, anything constructed or erected or attached to a fixed location on the ground.
That would be a deck.
That would be a deck, that would be a lean-to, that would be
That's
woodshed.
Foundation.
Well, no, because then you got crawl spaces, you got stuff like that too. That gets dicey.
Yeah, but a lot of times they're
We have-
added.
We don't have a definition for footprint on there.
I'm trying to think when,
No, we don't have one. So that, yeah.
you don't want to get overly complicated.
Yeah, what about, adding that la wall, like you had just said, foundation, anything consisting of,
Cause you can do like, such as, and then maybe give some examples,
Or you could say what it doesn't include.
well, you
Yeah.
could, actually, you could write what it would include, it could be the contiguous outside dimensions of a structure. Both, limiting, I shouldn't say that, not, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, the house and a garage, and then anything other than that would be considered not part of the structure. Right? Because anything other than a garage and the main living space would be not part of the actual footprint, the structure. you know, shed, stuff like that is what we're talking about, right?
So this is used lots of times when someone wants to rebuild something and they rely on where the footprint was originally. And that does include decks, I think.
It
When
does.
someone wants to rebuild, usually near the lake, they have a deck on the front. That's usually laid out on our plans that go to the zoning board.
If it's a fixed location on the ground.
So a deck is a fixed location on the ground.
So can you put can you just put the structure dimensions of a structure that are, you know, not limited, whatever, up to, affixed to the ground, something affixed to the ground, that would cover, that covers a lot more, but it's still, they can use that other, could they use like a wood shed or something like that as part of the footprint and then, you know, basically use it as living space instead of something that would have been accessed outdoors and use it as internal living space, even though it was supposed to be something accessible only through the outside of the house.
Yeah, because we're thinking of how is this word going to come up? And how is the definition important in that situation is when it comes up, when we're gonna use it.
Is there an
Do we
endless
have
list
anything else?
of
I know we
exceptions?
cover buildings destroyed in a fire.
Yeah,
Is there anything in there that may help us?
that's the special non-conforming section that we're going to farm out to someone, I think. But there is
Yeah,
that,
in my
that
mind,
wording is
footprint
in
is
there.
the
Yep,
foundation.
Yep.
Anything else is an add-on.
Yeah. Foundation could be a few things. So just tossing out the question.
Yeah. Well, you're the one that's gonna run into it. I'm trying to,
Right.
When
So
you,
what do we
when
want a
you go
footprint to
out,
be, you know?
when you go out and you do an inspection, what would you classify as a footprint? If somebody was talking about what you just said, they wanna knock down a camp and rebuild a camp.
Yeah.
What would you consider the footprint being if they had an attached wood shed, if they had a deck in the front, if they had, you know, front porch, garage? What types of structures would you consider being part of the footprint?
I think it would be what is existing there. Because they're gonna want to use that and repair it or replace it with something else. So the sticky part for me is if someone has a deck that's part of the footprint and then they tear it down and then they want to put the living space all the way to that line. That's kind of what you're getting at.
Would that be allowed?
But the
Would you
footprint to me would be what is attached to the ground.
Would you allow that? Would you allow somebody to take what was deck square footage and use it as permanent living square footage?
I think it would depend on where it is at. I mean, you could take that question and apply it to a lot of different things. And it wouldn't be a problem unless it was in a setback, right? Or in
Or
a short
I
land
gotcha,
zone, right?
off of property
so
line or
we
something.
want to say something. Give it two ways. When you look at the
Yeah.
existing structure and that the dimensions of the existing structure is the footprint, and then future things, dimensions are what's presented on the plans.
As presented on the original
On,
plans.
on the original plans, or if it's a new building, and I think usually there is a footprint diagram,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's what they have to stay with. This is, I mean, we keep all that stuff, right? So you have to file through everything, and if they want to change something,
Yeah.
goes back to the original plans. Now, I don't know, we have stuff for, you know, a lot of, there's a significant amount of stuff that's built way before zoning
Hmm.
on the lake, now in the town.
Yeah, that, all that stuff gets dumped under the
Yeah,
non-conforming
non-conforming,
ordinance.
yeah.
So we have to go back to what do we want a footprint to be defined as?
So probably the two areas that will be most significant is if they want to go too close to the setback.
Right? So then we have
requirement.
definition
And
for
and of course, when
setback.
they built it, the setback was probably a lot different.
And then they'll fall in, if they want to change it, they have to go to zoning and do the non-conforming thing. So
Or if
they're
it's
gonna
on the
go
lake.
through the loop of approvals one way or another. But we still have to go back to what a footprint is.
Yeah.
So to me, it would be a deck. If it was something that wasn't really attached, like a little roof over a pile of wood or something on the side. I would think that would be it, but
But today, if there was a house that had stopped at the setback and the deck went into the setback, you would allow that to be replaced all the way to where the deck ends and it could all be a living space now.
as long as it met all the other zoning regs, because it would still have to meet the setback regs and
No, the only thing I'm
not
thinking about,
do-
like,
re-
decks,
you know, redoing something that may be non-conforming.
if somebody does it illegally.
Well, they would have to come to zoning if they were to replace something like that within the
Yep.
setback anyhow, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If you use the definition as it's presented here and list the exceptions that come to mind, would that keep things simple and yet allow the town to have enough control so that somebody can't play word games and do something that is detrimental?
That's what I'm thinking of, word game play. Thinking of that, like what are they gonna use as for, word games with it? The contiguous outside dimensions of the structure, both livable and
Well, it
That's
depends
attached.
where the word footprint shows up in the regulations and what it's saying.
Right, so it shows up in the non-conforming sections,
Big surprise.
2 of them, and then it shows up in, I just had it open. What is this? Oh, this is the, personal wireless service facilities ordinance, so it comes in there. And then section 320.
That's non-conforming, isn't it?
Yep, under F, replacement of structures for non-conforming uses that are voluntarily removed. And expansion of a footprint,
But we don't have a definition.
but you
of a
know,
footprint.
right, so.
Hmm.
Those are the 2 sections, non-conforming and wireless service.
I think it's probably one that's best to keep it as simple as you can. If there's a couple of really key things that you don't think should be included, you probably put those in there.
Do we want to add to it? Now, do you want to think about it and come back at the next meeting maybe and
Yeah, that might be good.
have some more,
Because I see someone I found in that one.
yeah, so if we want to, and then, so as we go through this and you guys find some stuff, just send it to me. And then I'll like add it all together and put it on one document.
This
Okay.
definition, it's kind of going all over. This is the second half. It says boundary with the walls of the structure, meet the ground plane or podium. So basically, foundation.
Right.
yeah,
So
but
then that one doesn't include a deck because
Yeah.
decks
Yeah.
don't have walls,
Right.
but yet according to our definition of structure, which yeah, I say we just leave it as is and we come back
Yeah,
next.
Okay.
front yard.
Front yard. So front yard was only noted in section 318 that had to do with, the personal upkeep of, chickens and bees. That was the only section that was in.
and this is short and sweet, that's what a front yard is, an area between a building and the front boundary line known as street frontage. I mean, that's pretty
It's pretty basic, but
Yeah.
that would,
effective.
I do remember that from
It
my old
should be-
towns. You couldn't have chicken coops on the front yard. They were very specific about that.
yep. Yep, yeah, and I don't think they are allowed in the front yard, which is why that's in there.
I just think it should say the front face of the building or something about the front of the building,
Between,
which is probably the same as the building in this definition.
okay, so an area between the front of the building? The front face of the building?
Or between a building face or
Well,
the
there you
face
go.
of a building and the front boundary line.
We'll just put face.
Then,
for
then your
building
front
face.
yard might be aiming toward the side of the property if you put your front door on the side, right? Which a lot of people do.
I think.
I would
grew
say
up in a
the
house like
area
that.
between the structure and the front boundary line.
Mm.
Yeah, that's area.
That seems like front yard to me. And I would worry about doing it the other way, because a lot of people, I think, have their
If they
front
put a house
front
sideways.
door sideways, yes.
And
house
it
I grew
also
up in.
says between a building, not the primary building.
Yeah.
Because you still could have something other than the primary building in the front.
Yeah.
So maybe going back to keeping it simple is better.
All right, do you like it the way it is? Do you want to put building face? Then at least you know like what side of the building you're looking at.
It's kind of given when you say that between that and the street.
No,
Mhm.
I would think so. So you
Yeah.
leave it the way it is or that
Yeah,
face.
probably the way it is would be
All
all
right.
right.
You got one through clean, Jessica.
I know. All right, so this is the all controversial grandfather clause, and this actually came from the state. This is not noted anywhere in the zoning ordinance, so I don't know if at some point that can get added in when we do this non-conforming
I think.
ordinance all
I think
over
we
again.
Talked about it had to be.
Cause,
didn't
cause
we?
that's basically what that non-conforming ordinance is kind of telling you what you can do.
I think it would be better if we kept things as pre-existing or non-conforming or both. I think this is gonna cause problems if we start using grandfathering because it's a catch-all for a lot of things. And what it means to most people is that whatever was there, I can rebuild something new and put it right there because I can.
Now, is there a way to write in the zoning ordinances? You take the term grandfather clause or grandfather, whatever, and you eliminate it from the zoning ordinances altogether. People can't use that word. There is no such thing in the zoning ordinances, and it can't be referred to when you're going for any sort of exemption.
Right.
Is there a way to do that?
You just take it out. We don't have a definition and it's not used in there.
But if somebody were to say, well, I'm grandfathered in because this blah, 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 do we need to actually write it out so that it's not used in the terminology at all not for any of this?
I mean, it's pretty much, it's already laid out in this non-conforming section in 320. It tells, it's basically saying the same thing as that definition.
But it's called pre-existing use, right?
Right, pre-existing non-conforming.
And it relates to the structures and the land and the use, I believe.
Yeah, lot structures, lot
Yeah.
of structures and uses. So, I
So-
mean, we don't even have to even do, it just was a word we were talking about.
Yeah, we had,
You know, so, I
Tim's
mean,
example on this was beautiful, right?
Yeah.
We're going through one of the cases and, Tim said, well, okay, if it's, if you can grandfather these things, right? If there wasn't a stop sign at the end of my road and you put one in, and I've lived there before the stop sign was there, can I just drive through without stopping? I thought that was so awesome. The poor lawyer,
mean-
that's
you
good.
know.
What I find interesting about this one is I recall not too long ago, we looked at a boathouse that was a dwelling that was grandfathered and they're renovating it. And I was like, I thought you couldn't live in a boathouse. They were like, oh, it was here before and they're just renovating it. So now they can,
Yeah,
Well, that's your pre-existing
that
use.
was, yeah.
And we're dealing with a case like that right now. It's going.
yes. So we can just
scratch.
cross it off. Okay,
I
good.
don't
I
think
feel
it's gonna
better about
help
that.
us to have it.
I didn't like having it in there.
Right.
But
I like
I
what
just-
Norma said, it's just basically a catch-all for
Yeah.
everything that was there before.
So the word in kind,
Yeah.
on the other hand,
Right, so then I just came up with, again, something super simple. The substitution of a new structure for an existing legal structure.
Yeah.
But don't we always, is that term always used when we do site boundary mergers and I seem to call that in kind as always. in our-
yes,
Yeah,
this one shows up in the non-conforming section,
Yes, it does.
but it's not defined and it's not, I think it's a heading. And it talks about it, and then it just says in kind means you replace your old structure and your new one has to be the same square footage as what you're replacing. But then it says, but you have to meet today's setbacks,
And that wouldn't be.
which kind of takes it away again.
Yeah, it's
So
in-kind
that doesn't make
replacement.
sense.
Yeah, in-kind replacement means keeping the same square footage of a building area while allowing the building footprint to be realigned so as the new structure complies with all setback requirements. Did you understand that?
Yeah, so that's murky
That's a
and in the
lot.
middle of something else, and it needs
Yeah.
to be pulled out and defined.
Yeah.
However,
was a
we want to
mouthful.
do that, and then we can use it better. Is
I
that
think so,
good?
yeah.
In
So,
my mind, if you have to meet code, it's no longer in kind.
Yeah, that's true.
It'd be similar, but it wouldn't be in kind because
Well, I guess it would be as in kind as you could possibly do it, right?
well, that would also mean when a change of use, if you're not gonna,
Yeah.
Mm.
I don't know if that definition is going to help us either.
okay, well,
well, I
maybe
know that
shows up.
term's used a lot.
Yeah,
But it's,
We hear that a lot.
then maybe I can work on, um, density and in-kind. We'll come back with something a little better.
I'm putting your initials next to all of these.
I'm putting yours next to mine.
Okay.
Okay, so I struggled with this one because it was either debris, litter, trash, junk. So after reviewing a lot of the language throughout the zoning ordinance, junk seemed to be the one that fit the best. This is a definition also that comes, from the state. Items such as old grass, rope, rags, batteries, paper, trash, rubber debris, and waste, or junk dismantled or wrecked automobiles or parts thereof, or iron, steel, and other old scrap ferrous or non-ferrous materials.
You don't have to mention copper and brass, I think, if you're talking about ferrous and non-ferrous materials, that covers them.
That's what I was thinking too,
Can
but it
simplify
just,
that.
yeah, like I
Water.
said, I just typed in directly what the state had. But yeah, that does fall into that.
But that's the way the state has it written, right?
Yep. I mean, we don't have to go with the state.
No, I
but
know, but
yeah,
it's like probably the easiest way to do
Well,
things.
they're
That's-
saying the
yeah.
same thing, but more in an updated
yeah.
verbiage. Something tells me the state hasn't updated their definitions in a while.
That's probably true.
Going out on a limb there.
Right.
So this is necessary because of junk and debris
Mhm.
and garbage that is strewn about properties. And I can't enforce a regulation because I can't define what junk is.
Mm.
Did we
And
have a
I-
problem with this before with a used car lot?
Let's see, that one
Uh,
we've gotten. hold on.
Yeah, with a junkyard.
It was a junkyard, it wasn't a used car lot.
No, it was a junkyard, right? Which basically was a bunch of used cars. And all kinds of other stuff.
But I really think we can simplify this a lot. I mean, they don't really need to call out wrecked junk pieces of anything or really any specific materials. Unless you want to, but I think Webster has a pretty good definition of junk and garbage or debris.
What's Webster's definition of it?
I don't know.
I can,
Well, I mean, it's not, it has rubber debris, but does that include tires? Which is a pretty common.
Sometimes the more you define it, the
Right.
harder it
Yeah.
gets to
or-
enforce.
so
it.
yeah,
that
'cause
probably
it's-
would fall
It's not on
under
the list.
Right.
wrecked automobiles or parts thereof. I would take out, the old or scrap copper and brass at the very top, as Mr. Shea suggested, because
Yeah.
It's just repeating itself at the end.
Plus with
We
the
could
price
just-
of copper and brass, probably
Discarded
people aren't
material.
hanging on to it.
Yeah, I don't think people are gonna be having
Yeah, they're not gonna,
copper all over the backyard.
I think the state probably rewrote these regs during the Bronze Age.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, we could do the, the general trash, debris, waste, not to, it could be including the following or not limited to the following.
I just looked it up, so I looked up the Webster's one like you said. And it says older discarded material such as glass, paper, or iron that can be reused in some way. It can also refer to something that is secondhand, worn, or discarded. Junk can also mean something that is of poor quality, trash, or something that has little worth, meaning, or significance. That's what the definition they have is.
Interesting.
And we're gonna apply this to stuff on people's front lawns, right? That's what I'm saying. That's the only place we see it.
There's a lot of it.
Oh, it's more
No.
often than that.
Being on Roberts Cove Road, we
Yeah.
have down the street a junk aircraft.
Yeah.
They put a tarp over it for a while, but now the tarp is sliding back off.
All right, so do we want to get, all right, so items such as, do you want to just start with? I know so when you're kind of putting the such as, it's just giving some examples, so it's not, you're not nailed down to,
Mhm.
it's just rope, it's just rags, it's just batteries.
Yeah.
Or somewhere in there you stick not limited to.
Yeah.
Items such as old or scrap. Trash or discarded materials. Wrecked. Wrecked automobiles. And then
So with this one, if you wanted to, we could make a formal complaint and be in the right for the car repair shop across the street.
yeah, I know.
Right, I remember it came up something like that. about
Oh,
the
I know
used
it did.
cars.
I got rid of all the tires finally.
That's your shop like.
Mine, yeah, it's mine at Wayne Shop, yeah.
I know we ran into a situation where we took the cars out of it. And I forget why.
Why we what? Oh, took the cars out of it because we were talking about the definition of a junkyard.
Oh, that's what it was. There was more than just
Yeah.
junk. There was junk. There
It was junk,
junkyard,
it was,
there used
yeah,
car
there's
lot.
all these, yes,
That's
yes.
right, that is what it was, yeah.
And you use the word so many times in a day and then to try to define what it is actually proven to be more difficult than I thought.
Yes, it is, see?
Yeah,
It's-
older discarded material, I guess.
I think what, on this one, we have to be careful in including anything around the automobiles. Because I think it gets covered somewhere else.
I do too.
You feel like I felt like it was kind of like a overlapping,
Yeah, because.
because
I mean,
junkyard
Nick
does
nailed-
talk
nailed it.
about,
We did have a junkyard, we had a
yeah,
used car lot,
Yeah.
we had a car lot.
yeah.
What about if we simplify it, and that's, I know that sounds ridiculous, but if we were to write it as old, the ferrous and non-ferrous materials, and we just, in the beginning of it, we say old, discarded, unused, and then continue it from there. You know what I mean? And then like give a couple of those examples that we had, but obviously not the, debris and waste
trash and go from there, cause I think, don't we have, did somewhere we had mentioned, when you say rubber, didn't we at some point talk about the tires? Didn't we have a tire thing somewhere? Is there something about, is there nothing in there? I thought there was something about tires.
Not that I know of.
No,
No.
I thought there was something in there about tires.
Doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
And you guys think the only place this is used is, you can't have junk in your front yard, right? That's the only place we think it's used in any of the regs,
I don't think the front yard comes into play with this one.
just anywhere in your yard.
Yeah, I think it just, yeah, in
Okay.
general.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's usually lots of places.
So if I have a perfectly good unregistered 1932 Essex, this would not apply.
You're allowed to have,
I think it's junk.
But if
It's
you have-
registered,
you
right? If
have
it's
one-
registered?
No,
think
unregistered,
Oh,
you're allowed to
unregistered, you can
have
have one,
One,
Lot
one vehicle.
one. So I have to sell one of my Essexes.
Exactly.
Did you see the face?
being deep.
And it's not, I mean, it's a lot of houses that have this stuff.
Right. Yeah, I know. It's,
Job security.
Yes.
So this one's gonna require some more time, I guess.
yeah,
this one.
I'm thinking that's a good idea. We got this far. Okay, so if we want to move on, section number 2, was just to amend definitions. So this one came up, with an application to where, someone wanted to build a house and put an accessory dwelling unit, and they wanted to attach it only by utilities. So we didn't have it specifically stated how would that accessory unit be attached to the main unit. And
So all you did was add structure.
yeah,
in here,
Norma came
yeah.
up with that, we went over and asked, I'm like, I'm trying to come up with something, and she's just put in structurally, I'm like, that, I feel like that,
But it
That
still
works.
says, or on the same property.
right, because it can be
Can be a separate building.
detached above, a barn or a garage or, something like that. So this is at least telling you how is it attached with what? That was missing.
Okay. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yep. Yeah, everything else kind of seemed to be pretty straightforward. Is everyone okay with that one? And then seasonal cabin, I wasn't too sure. We had talked, Norma and I had talked about what is a cabin other than when is it allowed to be used? I don't know if it's just a simple explanation, a small residential structure. So I don't know if that didn't seem to be enough.
It can't be used in November or April, apparently.
Well, no, it's, oh, yeah, you're right.
Right.
You're
Other
right.
time- Any other time seems fine.
Right.
Yeah, that one seems a little off.
In no case shall the structure be used for more than 6. You could take out the dates and just keep the, in no case shall the structure be used for more than 6 consecutive months. That would technically be a seasonal cabin.
And then we could leave the dates in the seasonal definition.
Yeah, the seasonal use, I think it is, or
Yep.
seasonal, whatever it is.
Yeah.
The dates are in there.
Keep it as simple as possible. Small residential structure that is used.
Primarily
can-
in the summer season? Maybe?
Well, we can just, so.
A small
'cause we
resident-
define we define summer season, and winter season in another.
So a small residential structure that is not used more than 6 consecutive months.
What did you were having an issue with something? But it was, I think it was the way that the cabin was constructed. I think that was the conversation we had, was what type of materials,
Well, people
what
want
type
to
of
build
materials
one.
would make it be a cabin as
Like,
compared to a small home?
Well, if people want to build it, it's just
Yeah.
a small seasonal cabin. I don't need to do this or that. I'm like, well, we don't have a definition of a seasonal cabin.
Okay.
And I can't waive the building code. So we don't
Right.
really have a way to build something less than a building code for something that's seasonal, even though we have a lot of structures that are seasonal that exist here. And if people take down one and want to build a new seasonal cabin, which code do I use? But we didn't have a definition of that specifically either. I think there's
So-
cabins and cottages.
Yeah, because so this is just, so what this, when I'm looking at it, what this is telling me is I can build a small home, but I can only use it during the summer season and the winter season, and it can't be for more than 6 months. This doesn't tell me
Anything.
anything different than a cabin and a residential home. It's just a small residential house, and I can only use it seasonally.
Yeah,
I
but
don't
can
see the-
The argument where I put heat in it, and if I want to live here, it's my house.
You know, so,
You can't tell me when I can live.
right,
here.
because you're building a
I'm
home.
paying taxes,
Yeah,
That's what I
no,
was gonna ask. So the tax is different if it's
It-
only a seasonal.
you're right. Taxes are the same.
Even if
right?
it's seasonal.
I mean,
it's
that's
not-
what
not insulated.
most of
No,
the.
you gotta pay
lake
taxes year round,
cottages
you want
end
it.
up doing,
Yeah.
Right?
put heat in it.
So
I'm
would
staying
I-
there in the
tell 'em
winter time.
it's-
And
Might be
there's,
cold,
yeah,
but
most of them want to have cooling, mechanical systems.
Right.
So if it's something that's going to be not usable by adding it, and if it doesn't exist, then we can not necessarily add it.
I mean, I think the only way you could get out of dwelling unit is if they didn't put heat in. Because you have to have a working bathroom. For it to be a dwelling.
Yeah.
Not to say you can't have.
Building
an
code
outhouse, but-
has, it's the energy code, and anything that you build has to meet the residential building code. Unless it's a shed or an accessory structure. But we didn't really have anything that said you can build a cabin. And if it's seasonal, it means that they
I
don't
think-
usually want to insulate it.
Any lake community has lake houses now. Was a summer house is now a year-round house.
And a
'Cause they
lake
probably
house.
insulated, they put a heater in there, and now there's so many ways you put heaters in. I mean, you could
Mhm.
put a mini split in. But here you might want hyper heat. Stove in it.
Think we should take it out? Not put it in?
It's not mentioned anywhere, right? You said?
Hmm.
Is it mentioned somewhere? Maybe?
I mean, is the
I
House
think
of
it is.
Little Island putting heat in, or is that?
There's usually some type of insulation in the new buildings that are still going to be used
Because they have to
seasonally.
meet the R code.
Yeah, they meet like a basic building code, which,
I was trying to think of that because that's the only one I can,
yeah,
comes to my mind is that might be a
but people are
approved
building.
seasonal.
They're building sheds with a bathroom in them. And then maybe they're gonna use it for an office.
I haven't seen more garages with toilets.
Yes,
Coming
they
up.
have that, yeah. Rec rooms. A lot of accessory structures are being used for more activities and want more things available like bathrooms, and it can be, which line is it crossed sometimes, depending on what they're doing. Recreation.
That's what I was just looking. So I think, Norma, what you may have been trying to get out of this seasonal cabin definition might be listed under recreational camping cabin. Because that kind of gives you it can only be this big, it's gotta have this, it can't have that, that needs to look like that,
Yep,
That
that's probably better, yeah.
is probably what you would, may have been looking for.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, so. I don't know why we have two different things, a seasonal cabin and a recreational camping cabin. I'm gonna put this one on hold and look into that a little bit more.
Can you also consider, the 6 consecutive month limitation? Can somebody get cute, move out for a day and come back for a new 6 months?
Well, we're trying to not make non-residents residents. That's pretty much what it is. So that's why we're restricting that to the 6 months. So then you can't claim residency. So if it's just a recreational vacation cabin,
So it's 6 months in any given year?
yeah, yep,
Residency is that cute, I think. But if you're 6 months in a day, you're
yeah,
a
then
resident.
you're right.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people in town that are that way, I would guess, right? A lot of people go to Florida and stuff.
I think so. All right, so I'll research that one. Let's see, planning board proposed amendment number 2. This one also has 2 parts. And this one is to amend Article 200 definitions by adding new and amending definitions. And to amend Article 300, sections 320H2 and J5, which is the non-conforming uses, structures, and lots, to reflect changes in the definition of the building envelope. So I added things in here that would modify that non-conforming one on the off chance that our new non-conforming ordinance doesn't pass. So I wanted to still be able to clarify and clean things up if we still had to. So apparently our existing building envelope definition really is a definition for a buildable area. And then we came up with a building envelope definition that came from the building code,
Yeah,
I think.
so if you say building envelope, what do you think it is?
Inside the walls and roof,
Like the exterior wall assembly,
yes.
where the heat is on one side and the cool
Yeah.
is on the other, most of the time.
And I
Because
think
that's what I think it is.
Yeah, that's what you said first. We asked this the other meeting.
Part that protects you from the weather.
Yeah, but it's in the non-conforming and then it talks about where you can build something and then it's kind of this little tiny diagram. And it talks about a
Okay.
building envelope, like that's really where you could build on a lot.
So you're talking
where-
about defining it
That's different.
as the
That's confusing with
structure and
footprint.
inside of it.
We're not going back to
Right?
that,
No.
one yet.
I know,
But you're
I
right.
Is that what we're
Yeah,
talking about
trouble.
doing it?
Right.
Walls, building envelope. Sure.
Is that right, Norma? So what we're trying to do is define building envelope as not the buildable lot, the buildable amount, whatever on a lot, it's the structure itself. Oh, the outside walls in,
Yep.
right?
It's mostly from an energy perspective where you have to be able to trace all of what is separating the cold from the heat. And it
Okay.
has to be continuous. So the building envelope is basically the exterior walls, the roof and the foundation.
So an unheated attic would not be part of the envelope, or it would?
From an energy perspective, it wouldn't be.
Energy, it wouldn't, okay.
Maybe from a general perspective, it might, you could include the pick of the roof, but
Okay,
because some people insulate up underneath the roof and have a cathedral ceiling. But the buildable area is, in my mind, is what is where on the lot you can put a structure.
It's a pretty good example. That's
I
a
would
pretty good
agree.
Definition.
when you're coming from, like the planning board's regulations. And you have to indicate a buildable area on the plan when you're creating subdivision. That's the area you're building in. Okay,
Yep.
so this, I think, really cleans that up.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully most of these are a positive step.
So Norma, if you could just take a peek at H2 and then J5 on the next page to make sure that I've changed the buildable area and it's appropriate.
Okay. My,
Shall be allowed to expand only within. Why expand, isn't it? Should, allowed to be, I don't think you really need expand, but maybe I'm missing the point here, because for replacing something within the buildable area, the buildable area was defined by what was there, right?
yeah, it's kind of a weird statement in this one because this is talking about an entire structure that's non-conforming because all of it is located within the setbacks.
Okay. Oh, so they can expand it.
So they can only expand it within the setbacks? Or they can expand it as long as they expand it into the buildable area.
Let's say it was an old structure, they want to expand it. And they're non-conforming. And it's on a 5 acre lot and they want to go 200 feet back. Is it still non-conforming?
If the,
Because you still have, what would make it non-conforming this? Actually, let me put it that way, what makes it
Suppose it
non-conforming?
would depend
other-
on,
was
it
built-
would depend on what the non-conforming.
Yeah,
is.
I mean, if it was built
It,
prior to the code.
if it was sitting in the setbacks, it would be non-conforming.
Me, when you want to my mind, when I want to expand something that's non-conforming, well, now you got to make it conforming.
But if you
That's
don't
right,
take
that's what
down
it
what's
is.
Because things have to be made the code, now the existing code, of course, was built in 1950, before we had zoning here.
Yeah.
Those codes were a lot different than they are now.
Mm,
Like you're saying, it's gonna have to meet R factor, it's gonna have to.
Yeah.
So that's in my mind, if it's a non-conforming structure and you want to rebuild it, well, now it's no longer, now you have to bring up the code, no longer non-conforming, and if it's too close to a setback, then you have to move it over.
But if you move it over, you can expand it.
Right, because now it's,
So this is,
Conforming.
yeah, so this is written the right way, I think then.
but when I see you can expand a non-conforming, it's, to me, it's,
Oh, yeah.
But a lot of people that
Place
come
with
to
that.
zoning, they want to leave at least the part of the structure that's non-conforming in the setbacks and be able to keep it there, even if they expand it in another direction. They don't actually take it, they wouldn't move it so it wasn't in the setbacks.
because I know this doesn't count here, but in New Jersey, if they,
Yeah.
I can't remember the percentage was, if you expanded over a certain point, you had to put hardwire fire systems and
Yep.
do a whole lot of extra things if you went over that percentage.
Yeah, the existing building code is for changing buildings that exist, and that's all laid out by what level of renovations are being done. So that kicks into which codes need to be enforced and not, so.
I think you get it right here, because buildable area is only on land that's permitted. And you can expand on land that's permitted as long as you're staying
Yep.
within the setbacks. And all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that
That-
how you read
Yeah.
that?
I do one of
Don't
those
think
too.
that's the-
That's
yeah, like
fine.
you.
Let me read the second one.
Yeah. okay.
Where
That
we
makes
at?
a lot more sense to me.
On
Yep.
J. On J.
Yep.
No.
I think I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yep. That looks good.
Hey, Norma says it's good.
She probably wrote it.
So we're on amendment 3? Is that right?
Where are we on J? Was J good?
Yeah.
Are we gonna move along?
I like it much better.
Okay, yes. All right, so article number 3, this is the one that Tara's gonna help us on.
Okay,
That's a lot.
So, I did include the 3 definitions and the ordinance. I wouldn't even waste any time on this, honestly.
We're paying somebody to do that.
All right, so we can move over to planning board proposed amendment number 4. This is to amend Article 300, Section 328 height restrictions by identifying the maximum allowable height of a building near the shoreland as follows. And I didn't write anything, 'cause I didn't get that far. And I needed to talk to Norma and we just didn't seem to click this week.
And available.
Yeah. So we did talk about, Norma, I had talked about,
Maximum 15 feet.
having a different maximum height when it comes to, what was it, the cabins, like tearing down a cabin and then building a really large
Yeah, it's more that
home or,
I think having one height for all buildings in all areas just seems a little too general. Having seen garages that are 10 feet from someone's property and they're 60 feet long and they're 35 feet tall. And all of a sudden there's this big monster. So if there's a way to soften it somehow, whether, I don't want to pick on like a lakeshore residential district, but when I see little cabins coming down and houses that are 2 or 3 times bigger or more going up, and the only restriction on height is this one number, and it applies to anything. So I just thought it would be worth mentioning to see if the town or this group wants to consider changing that or adding any other limits that might be more specific
Is
to
one of the
areas or not.
Things for the height requirement is obstructing views of adjoining properties.
yeah, so you have that, people pay that view tax.
View tax.
Yeah. So that's, that's definitely an issue when it comes to,
Yeah,
those property owners.
that usually gets brought up.
Yeah,
But it would be possible for someone who may not be in a butter that might be affected by something,
all right.
that might not get invited to a meeting or be aware of something.
How
Because
does the view-
35
how
feet
does the-
pretty high.
I'm not exactly sure. I can find out for
You
you.
know, Nick, you guys,
Yeah, my dad gets it with a pretty good view tax.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so it's if you can see water.
it's, I can't remember as it's defined, but it's because he's able to see, I want to say it's X amount of miles or something like that.
Yeah.
It's your
I'm not
ability
sure,
to see.
Yeah.
And it's, it is a good definition. There is a good definition for it, and it's on the tip of my tongue. I should have known that.
And that's all zones.
Yeah, that's all.
I can talk to the assessor and get a feel of, how that functions. To be able to understand what we're trying to,
So our
what we're trying to
concern with
do.
someone building a 35-foot building is that will take away someone's right to be able to see 2 miles and maybe reduce our tax base.
What do you mean? I did, hold on, what do you mean?
Well, it sounded like when you guys brought up the view tax, that caught my attention quickly. But from the opposite side, right? So if the guy next door to someone who lives there puts up your 35-foot garage and it blocks his ability to see 2 miles, that guy doesn't pay the view tax anymore, right?
I don't know if it changes.
I don't know
that's a
if
good
that
question.
person would be allowed to
They'd
build
probably have
that
to come-
building.
They'd come back and whatever it's called,
Abate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
try to get it
Yeah.
abated.
Yeah, I don't know how that functions. I definitely would talk to
Town
them.
would still probably do it right because they
Yeah.
charge the new house more taxes.
But
Mm.
yeah, I think
Because
the other
they'd be
would get
assessed at a
away
much
with it.
higher rate.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
I don't think
wasn't
the
even
town would
thinking
lose.
of taxes. I just
Yeah.
think 35 feet is really high for a lot of small lots or small.
What would
closely
you propose,
compact.
Nolan? What were you thinking as a alternative?
Well, we have a 4-story house being built that's 35 feet tall, and it's really just monstrous in comparison to most houses. I know there's a lot of really big houses out there, but
They squeeze 4 stories.
Probably
Is it like-
basement, a walkout basement or
Oh,
something.
yeah, I guess. So
No,
I'm
there's
thinking
4 full
general
stories.
rule,
There was 4 full stories. Like
was it a
non-including
general rule,
basement.
was it residential's
It
10
was-
feet?
It was 35 feet. You gotta keep it under 35 feet, and that was the only height restriction. So
Was it the one with the cupola?
I was hoping that maybe we talk specifics in
Okay,
this
we won't
public
talk
meeting.
specifics, but I think we changed that to being 3 stories and a cupola, right?
Somebody did, I think.
We did, I think. I think
It
we
wasn't
did.
me.
But now, I'm sorry I brought up that case, but I know what you're talking about now.
It just seems like a really tall building for,
I don't know, is this, I don't know, if we have. the
If you don't
money, I
agree,
know if
then
This
don't
is
agree.
something Tara can maybe look into, or?
I can ask her, you
Would
know.
you relate it to the lot size?
or maybe what was there before.
Oh, if it's a replacement, yeah, maybe what was there before,
So some
some
of it's that,
allowance.
we end up with things that go before the zoning board with a square on a site plan. And maybe the square is a little bigger and doesn't look like a big deal. And then when you get the 3-dimensional one, like, oh. Looks really different. So,
No, I mean, I'm with you. I can see where you've been living someplace for 20 years and all of a sudden somebody buys the house and they're put this huge house next to them. I mean, even if it blocks the sun or everything.
It happened to me when I lived in Hooksett.
Oh, really?
I had a great view of the Merrimack River from my porch. And then a big 3-story went smack dab across the street from me. And now I looked at a 3-story.
But they own the air rights, so they had the right
Yeah,
to do that.
exactly. Right.
Right, and you,
Yep.
when no matter what, we're not gonna change that, that's just
Yep.
the way it is. So, I'm thinking about this, and, are we better off we saying it's 32 feet? No. We better off we say it's 28 feet? Probably not. Cause we still got a bunch of houses in town that are 35 already.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess I'm trying to figure out what's the, what would be the solution?
So maybe, so I could,
I don't know what the.
I could
solution
do some research, around Lake
is.
Winnipesaukee.
Yeah.
Or look at the towns around Lake Winnipesaukee and see if they have anything like that in place. And see what it looks like.
That'd be interesting to hear.
I'm curious if you could even limit
Why don't I
that
do
to
that?
to the Lakeshore District, like only the houses that are directly on the lake, but why would you limit it to just them?
And how much would the Board of Selectmen, I would suggest we take down the taxes on the Lakeshore residential piece?
Well, we
Because
can't
all of
do
a sudden
any
it
tax
got limited.
reductions.
What do you,
Cause that's what I would come, I live in the Lakeshore,
Oh,
resident.
yeah.
I'll come back charging you guys saying,
whoa,
yeah, I just
whoa.
got a new limitation on my property, we gotta figure
I'm,
out how to
I'm
reduce
talking
taxes.
it out here. We're
gotta
talking about it.
reduce
I'm
that.
trying to, I know, but I'm trying to talk it out. I'm not,
But that's what I'm
Let's
saying,
not in
right?
trouble.
People would say that, if you're gonna limit what I can do on my property, it's gotta be.
people already limit. You were just
Ain't gonna
talking about my
live, I
work.
think, the
You're already
25
limiting
feet
it.
It's a good point.
Came from the old fire department thing. That was the biggest ladder they carried.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So that was always the catch-all. Oh,
Right.
fire department can't go over 30, you can't go over 35 feet because the fire department can't get to the
Yeah, we
top
got a
floor.
Yeah.
100-footer now.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of towns that have different setbacks
Gotta
for
get
different
Yeah.
districts and different heights for different things. I just thought it was interesting that we have one set of setbacks for everything and we have one height.
I think
So
the right.
I just thought it was worth
Right.
raising.
Yeah.
That's a good
Put some
point.
attention on it.
That's a good point right there. And I guess I wasn't really thinking that.
I would think
We
the
do.
right
We
answer
got
to this one
setbacks
for
or
tonight
all kinds of
is
stuff.
what Jessica
Right.
suggested, which is we look at what other towns.
Yeah,
do.
Yeah.
I think that,
Yeah. Like
I'm
if
fine with
you-
that.
Like maybe if you're gonna build something that's the maximum height, maybe your setback should be more. Or something like that.
Yeah, all right. I'll do
Get
some
on that,
research.
would you? Yeah.
Smaller, what, yeah.
Didn't we,
I'm already on it.
did we recently change the setback in side residential?
Uh,
We didn't? Back for
3
like-
years ago.
So we had to
Couple,
move back
two-
the septic to like 200 feet and field was now 500. Didn't Do some ridiculous thing like that, moved it, not
No.
ridiculous, but we moved it.
No,
I thought we had, all right.
no, we did something about frontage, but that was like 3 years ago or something.
Okay. Well, I've been, what's the term, grandfathered in?
I use that term anymore.
Can't use that term.
Yeah. Okay, it's done.
Okay, all right, so I'll do some more work on that. Then we have, planning board proposed amendment number 5. This one also has 2 parts. This is to amend Article 300, Section 350, manufactured and pre-site built housing by striking the language for pre-site built housing, which is modular homes, and creating a new ordinance entitled Section 349, pre-site built housing, and to amend Section 412E, restrictions governing use, as follows. If this passes, this will also stem an amendment to the table of contents. So currently, Section 350 includes information regarding modular homes and mobile homes. So it's kind of confusing. It's not clear, and they really need to be separate. So that's what I did.
Modular and mobile? Is that what you said? Modular and,
Correct.
okay.
Yep. So now modular homes has its own section. It's real small.
I think they might have their own set of regulations that may be different than manufactured homes.
Okay, like more stuff to add to that.
I recently found there's like a separate index in the
Oh.
building code about them.
Okay.
So anyway,
All right. So if you want to send me that information, I can add that on here for next time.
okay.
Okay. So the existing section 350, I'm proposing to change it to manufactured homes and park performance standards. Because originally, when you're looking at this section, if you're just looking at the heading, say in the table of contents, you're gonna not find anything about a mobile home park. You're not even gonna know it exists unless you actually go into this section. So I'd like to change the heading on that. And I haven't proposed to change anything within the body of, the manufactured home park or
This is gonna
the
become,
housing
a-
in
I
general.
feel like this is gonna become a real thing. Like, we're gonna start seeing these pop up.
It already
Oh, we already
has.
It
have.
has, I
We
know it
already
has.
have.
We've seen it in
Yeah.
plans, yeah, we know.
And it's a
Yep.
problem. Two things, right? Under A, every time we
Yeah.
say 14 feet, everybody that comes in with, mobile homes, manufactured homes, they can't, they're not 14 feet, they're like 16 feet. Because they don't know where to count to or something. It's like the edge of the roof line or the sides of the building. So we should probably fix that because it's almost a non-issue issue. But every time they come in, they're like, oh, my mobile home is 16 feet wide, not 14 feet wide.
Because of the
Well,
roof line.
And then
Yeah.
everybody debates where they count from and all, so we should probably address that. But my bigger issue, if
Yeah.
I could,
Yeah,
is we got, under manufactured home park here, which is great, right? And it's nothing that you changed, but we can stick these all on 10,000 square foot lots, right? Which I understand, but there's no limitation to the size of the building
Oh, in relation to the 10,000 square feet. Oh.
or at all, right? So you could build a huge manufactured home on your, right? So if you're coming in from a mobile park, all of a sudden it's a mobile park that looks like McMansions. By this, as I read it, you could get away with that.
You're talking about a 9,000 square foot. You realistically, a 9,000 square foot footprint, right? And
Yeah.
on a 10,000 square foot lot, there's no
Right.
limitation there.
And on 9,000 square foot,
Is he
you could
right?
build a,
Yeah, but you need to have a manufactured home, which is a HUD standard, which is either a single wide or a double wide,
oh, I didn't
Oh,
realize.
so there are
that.
limitations for it.
I would think. I don't think they go bigger than that unless you put a breezeway in a garage.
right, they're pretty
And then
standard
how does
sizes.
That, yeah, but they are pretty standard size. So this whole manufactured section is all based on this HUD standards, which is a government standard.
Oh, okay, okay, that,
The
Right, but-
modular is very different. So that's why we really wanted to pull it out of there because it didn't really belong in there.
could I ask a favor then, if it's easy? Could you like produce what the HUD standards are for next time? If it's an easy thing to pull up? Or is it a hard
Be
thing?
careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
Only because I'm worried about, you got the 9,000 square feet, you could stick these.
Yeah,
Could it happen? Could it happen? Yeah.
And
I mean-
actually, the guy,
there isn't a.
well, I know we're not talking a
percentage
specific
of-
case, but I ran into like an instance where a guy wants to put a mobile home. It's on whatever number of acres, he's cutting out a piece for his own home, which is gonna be 6,000 square feet, 8,000 square feet big on 39 acres. everything else is stuck over here on the 10 acres, you know, and it would just be good to know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It would be interesting to hear, I suppose there's standards from the fire department regs as far as having, you know, so far away from,
Oh, right.
you know, your home to,
When we're talking about manufactured
neighbor.
homes,
you know, there's gotta be some,
Yeah,
you know,
I can
minimum,
see even in the building code.
you know, yeah.
when we're talking about manufactured homes with like that, the place in Tilton that builds you know, like, I think it's like Camelot or something like that, do those count as manufactured homes? So technically what he's saying is right, because if you make a manufactured home park, technically that's a thing, right?
Well, is Camelot, I'm not familiar with
I'm
that.
just using it as a for instance, because
Right.
I've driven by it.
So they're either the two halves of homes that get put together, which are typically modular homes, and those have different standards.
You know, these are homes that are shipped in like 4 different pieces and they put them together, but they're like,
Yeah.
it's like a,
Prefab.
It's like a
Right.
federal colonial.
Right.
yeah, it's
Those
just
are
like,
modular.
so that's considered a modular.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yeah.
getting my
That's not
definition
Manufactured are on
Right.
an axle and
Manufactured
they're pulled
homes are
down the
mobile
road.
homes.
on axle. Okay, well, we were talking about
Yeah.
defining mobile manufactured and we didn't want to use mobile anymore, so I'm trying to
Right.
figure out where that fall. Okay, now it makes
Yeah.
sense. I got it.
Took me a
That's why I
while to
think it's worth seeing the
get
HUD
that in there.
standard.
Yeah.
And that's why it has to be clearly separated out. Because I think we
Mm.
are gonna see more of them. I have 4 building permits right now for modular homes. And I know that there's more coming.
Right.
But those have
HUD
to be on
standard.
2 acres, right?
They should be in accordance with our regulations for building site-built homes.
That, so it's considered a site-built home, so yeah, it's 2 acres, right?
I just would like to, I'm sure you're absolutely right, and I don't disagree, but be curious to know what the HUD
Yeah.
standard is.
Yeah.
You probably already know it, I don't.
I know it's a lot, so I'll email it to you. So part of A, do you want to do the second sentence in A, or am I moving you forward without you being ready? Because of what it says here. Manufactured homes under 14 feet in width with flat roofs, rounded roof, exterior walls, non-traditional site-built appearance to be permitted in manufactured home parks or only.
Yep.
So what the town was led to believe or sort of believed is that you couldn't have a manufactured home on a single lot. It had to be in a manufactured home park. But that's not what our ordinance says. It
Right.
says
That's what I was
the
told when
width
I
of
first
it,
got here.
and then they can only be in a park. So there's 2 things in here and they need to be separated out. Do you want manufactured homes only in manufactured home parks? And I don't know what you want to do with the width of them. I don't know why that
Well,
matters, but
I just thought about the width, what he was talking about with the 14 to 16 feet. What if you wrote manufactured homes with body not exceeding 14 feet? That would cover the roof thing you were talking about, right? If we were to just label it as the body,
Yeah, well, whatever it is, it needs to be clear.
yeah, not the roof line. I know what he's saying. There's 1.5 feet on either side, foot on either side of the, you know, of the
it's
overhang
not
roof.
clear.
But that doesn't solve Norma's issue, right? Norma's wondering
Yeah.
if we can build a mobile home on a 2 acre lot
All by
outside of a
itself.
mobile park,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So-
I
'Cause
thought.
we
I
thought
you
that's what it
couldn't.
said, but that's not what
Yeah.
it says.
So that's what I thought
Yeah.
as well,
I
but
just told you couldn't.
after reading this again, over and over,
And meeting with a lawyer for an hour.
so they are allowed in town,
Only in manufactured home.
but if
parks.
they're under 14 feet, they're only allowed in the park.
Anything over 14 feet can be on a 2
Yeah.
acre lot.
Oh, so. And everybody's making an argument
But
they're
it
16
doesn't
feet
say
wide
that.
anyhow.
Right.
So let's make it say what we want it to say.
What do you see as being adequate for that?
Well, I don't know how to decide where they should be allowed or not, but I think it should be stated separately from, you need to take the size of the home and where in town you can put them and put that into two different sentences.
What's the standard single wide mobile home or manufactured home width?
I think it was hard for them to find a 14-foot width. Wasn't that the case? He kept
They're all
ended up with
16
13
foot,
and a half. I thought it
16 by like
was-
50. Like one of the guys had 16 by 50, the other guy doing the park had 16 by 60. Or maybe double wide was by 60, but I know they're
Yeah.
like 50 feet wide, long by 16 feet wide.
Yeah, they, at least the single wides have to be narrow enough to go down the road. So I don't know if they add the edge of the roofing on after.
I don't know, but remember they came in with plans and the plans were 16 feet. That's why the 16
Yeah.
sticks in my head.
Yeah, I was
And then
thinking it
everybody
was less.
debated what you count from.
Right. But I still think we need to, as a town, decide if they can only put manufactured homes in parks. If you're going to buy a new one and put it somewhere.
I think it should be the width thing. I think it should be a certain width can be on its own lot. You know what I mean, a certain width, like 16 feet and under could be in the manufactured home park to cover the roof line. And exceeding 16 feet has to be on its own individual lot, you know, conforming to the 2 acre minimum, whatever that. what
Or
is
that
that
it
building
could
code?
be,
Like, I
but
think,
you
yeah,
can't
like,
limit it. You can't say the width has to be in one place or another.
right.
I don't think.
You can't do that.
I don't, well, you have mobile home parks that have single wides and double wides. So if you start dictating where
No.
the width ends up,
Yeah.
I think it gets kind of confusing.
What classifies a single wide and a double wide, other than obviously the two halves, but what do they consider? Like how would you put? That's a good question. I don't know how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, the single
You're,
wide is the complete housing unit in a smaller package.
Does a double wide only require 10,000 square feet? What?
I don't know. I
So
think
I've
if it's in a
here,
manufactured home park,
typical
it would,
single section is 14 to 18 feet wide, and 52 to 80 feet long.
wow.
That's what we've been seeing.
And a double is typically 24 to 32 feet wide and 56 to 76 feet long.
Huge. I haven't seen the 60 was the biggest one I saw, but
Yeah.
I think it goes as far as a triple. I've never seen a triple,
Yet,
but
We
that's
will see.
36 to 45 feet long,
yeah.
56 to 60 feet, 66 feet long.
Great.
So
that's what, 10,000 square feet is 100 by 100.
I think so, yeah.
Mhm.
Mm,
You're
And
taking
if you
up most of
gotta-
that. You're taking up most of that space with
The
the
majority
house.
of it.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So I don't know what the intent of this was. If the intent is to have manufactured homes only in certain areas or not. Or
Right, maybe they
what
just
the
didn't want
intended
little
message
teeny
is.
tiny mobile homes
Yeah,
plucked through the town.
yeah. So they want them,
Maybe someone wanted a mobile home and so they put restrictions in, said,
you know, they didn't like them.
right?
you know,
The only thing I've seen is people are saying that coming the new affordable housing for,
I mean, yeah, if you think
For
about it,
people.
yeah.
ooh. So I mean, if they can afford the land, this is all I can afford to put on there.
Right.
How do you help them without hurting them at the same time? Yes.
That's the big question.
And what do you do when they're on a lot for 5 years and then there's a problem or they get damaged and then they need to be repaired? And what standards apply at that point? Because HUD doesn't really cover something, 5 or 10 years down the road. Then it just becomes a home that's in our town that needs to be repaired. And then what regulation goes into play?
And if you followed the zoning guidelines, and that's the
Yeah.
questionnaire thing at the end.
Yeah.
One of the questions is, does doing what you're asking to do impact the home values that abut you?
Something
Yeah.
like that would, right?
It probably would, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then you have to decide that, yeah.
It'd be like if somebody put a single wide in, like on the shoreline. I
Yeah.
mean, it's gonna drastically reduce the value of the homes around it. Yeah.
Think.
That's gonna be a tricky one.
Do we want to try to work on that
I
section?
think we need to.
Is
It
there,
needs
is,
some,
is there another town that would have a definition of someone when you're looking at the definitions from the other towns? I wonder if they have anything better defined than we would on that. What they use as a guideline. What town around us do we know that has more than one manufactured or mobile home park in it?
I know Wolfboro does.
Well, Wolfboro would be a
Mm.
good comparison in this case, I guess. See
Meredith
what they have
probably
written.
does too.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm sure most towns do, they're just, you know,
Buried somewhere.
yeah, right.
Yeah, it's buried
Is
somewhere.
Right.
it fair to ask if, when we're talking to those folks, to ask if they have a specific zone set up for mobile homes?
Yeah,
Or
I
is,
mean,
Only allowed in this zone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because we
yeah.
do, we have the
or
same
maybe
thing.
a zone that's. been-
Yeah.
We have,
manufactured
includes that.
home.
Yep.
we have that in the table of uses
Oh, we
and,
do.
you know, that lists out where it's allowed, not allowed. Or allowed by special exception.
We do?
Yep.
It's listed where they're allowed?
Yeah.
Where are they not allowed right
in
now?
Lake Shore residential,
Right,
and then all the there's a few yeses, but they all need special exceptions.
right.
And then there's a no, there's,
Yeah, and the recreational services zone, which is tiny.
What is the no with exception? Which
So-
zones are those?
So the no with exception is the recreational services zone.
The no with exception?
Yep.
And the other ones are all allowed, but
And
with,
then there's a no here.
it's a flat out no for Lake Shore residential.
Where am I? Right here, manufactured home. So they're allowed.
rural, like residential, no. Residential, commercial.
Right. So
okay.
you gotta
Residential.
so you gotta see the C
yeah.
section 350
Which
A
is
and B,
what
which is
we're
what we're
doing
working
right
on.
now.
Yeah,
Okay.
which will. Yeah,
There's another concern, I have to bring it up, but one of the concerns that I had with the mobile home, manufactured home development is that a certain amount of land was required to be able to put in the number of houses. And we're allowing perhaps the person that owns that piece of land to also on that land put their own house, which doesn't have to be a mobile home.
Right.
And it could be cut off on a huge piece of land that they might want to put their house on and sell, 3 weeks later because they ran out of money or God knows why.
Mm.
They're out, they had to move to Cal, who knows, right? Can they sell that piece of land, even though the land is counted in the mobile home development?
now they have to subdivide
Why, if the other guy's coming in as,
because it's one lot.
would we allow them to subdivide? Because that land was counted when they were doing the math to get the.
Right, so yeah, so that's the problem.
I know.
He would have to abide by all of the subdivision regulations
So
for the
he-
mobile home
so
park he
could
just
sell
put
the whole
in,
Park,
it's
but he
messy.
may not
Right.
own the whole park at that point because he's had 40 mobile homes, that 5 of which have been sold.
Right,
Well, that
so if he sold
one
it,
that
so
we
a mobile
looked
home
at,
park,
He was gonna own all the land.
Except that he wanted to maintain the right to be able to sell his house, which was 1/3 of the land.
so
Did
if he
you-
sold his land, he would also
His-
be
where his
selling the
house is
mobile home
not-
park.
But
But
he
that-
wasn't willing to say, if I sell it, I own the whole thing as one, I would have to sell the whole thing as one.
Oh, he wanted to have
He
his
wanted to
own
be able to
home
have the
lot
right to sell his home,
Yeah.
on a separate lot.
which almost
And
seems
then
like
so he would be still in possession of the mobile home park?
Yeah. but
And he would
the
sell his home,
But
and
sell
that
it
wouldn't
as-
be able to take, you'd have to be one owner of the mobile home park.
right.
And in the way he was setting up the mobile home does not fall under the subdivision, the minimum subdivisions requirements.
I thought that did, as long as he kept it all together with the land he was putting aside for his house.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really dove deep
But
into that application yet, but.
I think the question is bigger than that, right? So,
Mm.
and I didn't mean to bring up that specific case,
Mm.
but I think the question is, how many of these mobile home parks do we want in town? Where do we want them? And are there better rules around making sure that they're handled maybe like Wolfboro does, where you can't really see them?
Hmm.
Which sounds horrible, but you know, it'll maintain the allure of Alton.
Right. I mean, it could be written into the ordinance.
I don't know,
On what
that's we
is,
gotta figure out, I
you know,
guess.
on what you would want required, you know, some type of buffer and things like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
I
these
know.
two sentences need to be clear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
but I do think one thing that would make life easy is to figure out if, what 14 feet means, if it was 16 foot,
Mhm.
problem solved.
Yeah, I'll check on the sizes.
Okey-dokey. And then the last one, which was part two of proposed amendment number 5, is to just update section 412, restrictions governing use, and it's just updating language. That's all.
Just curious, I mean, I've asked so many questions tonight. One more question. Recreational vehicle, how long does it have to sit to be considered a recreational vehicle, like one day? Like, if someone pulled a recreational vehicle into someone's lot, how long is it allowed to sit there before it becomes a problem like this is would address?
I think it
There's,
is
there's like
10
a,
days.
yeah, there's a
an
couple
RV
different
section.
things, right? You can,
I have that one in my head. And
Because
I
if
don't
someone had like their kid pull in a recreational vehicle, that wouldn't be allowed to.
right, it's allowable for 10 days,
Oh, it's
and
10
later
days.
than that, you need a building permit, and it can't be,
And
it
it
has to
still
be
can't, it
hooked
can't
up
be
to
there for.
septic, there's
You don't have to look it
some,
up, but that's.
yeah,
that's-
there's
so we
some
do have stuff about
caveats,
that.
yeah,
Perfect. All righty,
yeah,
thanks.
and that's it.
There's a lot there.
Yeah. Um, All right,
Minutes?
don't have minutes for you guys tonight. I will
Good,
try to
so we can move on.
get them to you guys as soon as I can.
Should we open this to public input?
Yeah, any public input? There being none, we move on.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
I don't have any further discussion.
Next meetings?
Yep, so we had already had a September 18th date scheduled, I think, when we met the first time.
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay, good. So we're gonna need to meet, we could probably, let's see, so if we're gonna meet with Tara. I reached out to Tara to try to get an idea of when she's available. So that way we could actually schedule meetings for her to attend. She hadn't gotten back to me yet. So I don't know if, do we want to leave?
Of October open?
Yeah, we just kind of leave it as is for right now.
Yeah.
Until I can get some feedback from her. I don't think it makes sense to make a schedule meeting
No.
if she can't make it.
We're gonna meet on the 18th anyway, so.
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully we'll try to get her to meet on that night as well, as long as she doesn't have another
Right.
meeting to attend.
But that's
Um,
only good if none of us live in a seasonal structure where we can only live there till September, have to be out.
Or in a mobile, or in a.
Well, we-
Right.
vehicle Where I have to be. 10 days.
Right,
Thank you.
Then you go someplace else for 10 days and you come back.
Go to my parents' house.
Or you just,
Florida,
you just
Florida.
stay and put an address on.
Yeah.
Um,
Or you wait until you get caught.
It.
so the goal is to have ZAC present the proposed zoning amendments to the planning board at their November 19th meeting. And then at that meeting, the planning board would schedule a public hearing, which is potential of December 17th. And I talk to you people like you're not the planning board.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But we haven't really made a bunch of zoning amendments, have we? We just made clarifications and definitions.
Yeah, I mean, they're considered amendments. That's just what they're called. Yep.
I
So,
can make some more if you want.
It's enough. Next year.
I think if we can get that non-conforming use
Yeah,
section.
that's huge.
Because we end in that a lot, as you know. And it's just cumbersome.
Mhm.
I think
So
the
it
biggest
needs a
ones
lot
are
of work.
non-conforming in the manufactured
Mm.
homes.
Yep.
I think that's gonna be a big,
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, some years we have really big things, and other years are kind of light. So it's, all depends on what's going on throughout the year.
And it's not for this group to take on like where the commercial zone would be and.
Eventually, yeah,
Well, that's gonna
that's
come
what
actually,
we're gonna be tackling that. At some point, we did have that discussion when we went over that list.
But not before
Um,
November.
No,
we're
not this
talking
year.
Next year.
Yeah, not this year, because things like that includes, it's cost. So you gotta, look for warrant articles and things like that. Yep. I'm all set.
Motion to adjourn?
second.
Third that.
You're adjourned.
Okay.
8:09.
All right.
9 over our agreement. Yeah, we missed the. That's because somebody asked about it. I know.
There's always.
Mr. Shea.
It was the guy who said he wanted to be out of here at 8 o'clock.
I learned a lot. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Knowledge. Always comes.